Una pressed her back against the cold metal wall, trying to find even the smallest bit of warmth in the abandoned mining station. Her blue skin, once bright and beautiful like ocean waves, now looked dull and grey. The emergency lights above, her head blinked on and off, making scary shadows dance across the empty hallways. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her small body, but it didn't help much. The cold was everywhere, creeping through her bones like tiny needles. Una was different from other Kethlan people. While they could make heat inside their bodies to stay warm, she couldn't. Her body was broken, at least that's what everyone back home told her. Defective, her own mother had whispered, looking away with shame. She cannot survive like us. The elders of her village had made their decision quickly. They couldn't waste food and shelter on someone who would die anyway. When winter came, so they put her on a transport ship to this dead planet, telling her it was for the best. Maybe you'll find a way to fix yourself, her father had said, but his eyes were empty of hope. Now she sat alone in this huge empty place that once buzzed with workers digging for precious metals. The mining company had left years ago when the planet got too cold to work on. They left behind their machines, their buildings, and their heating systems. For a while, those heaters had kept Una alive. She looked at the small device next to her, one of 3 heaters she had found and fixed using old parts. Its red light was getting dimmer. Soon it would die like the others. She had learned to repair many things during her long, lonely days here, but she couldn't make magic. When the power cells ran out, they ran out. The station groaned and creaked. Around her as the metal contracted in the freezing air. Outside, winds howled across the icy landscape, carrying snow that never melted. Una had watched through the windows as the seasons changed, but here there were only different types of cold. Sometimes bitter cold, sometimes freezing cold, and sometimes the killing cold that made her hide deep inside the station's center. Her stomach rumbled with hunger. The food supplies she had carefully rationed were almost gone. She had found some emergency rations in the workers' quarters, but they were meant to feed people for days, not months. Every meal now was smaller than the last. Her thin frame had gotten even thinner, making the cold hurt worse. Una touched the small cracks that had appeared on her arms, where her crystalline skin was breaking from the cold. They didn't hurt much, but she knew what they meant. Her body was giving up piece by piece. Soon the cracks would spread and then she would shatter like ice dropped on stone. She had tried so many things to stay warm. She built a shelter using old blankets and metal sheets. She exercised until she was exhausted, hoping to create heat through movement. She even tried meditation techniques her grandmother had taught her, focusing her mind on warmth and summer days. Nothing worked for long. The worst part wasn't the cold or the hunger, it was the loneliness. Una talked to herself just to hear a voice. She had conversations with the broken machines, pretending they could answer back. Sometimes she sang old songs from home, but her voice echoed strangely in the empty halls, making her feel even more alone. At night, she dreamed of warm places. She remembered sitting by the community fires on her home planet, watching other children play while she sat apart because of her condition. Even then she had been alone, but at least she could see other faces and hear other voices. Here there was nothing but the wind and the creaking metal. The heater beside her gave a small beep and went dark. Una stared at it for a long moment, then slowly reached over and picked it up. The metal was already getting cold in her hands. She had 2 heaters left, maybe enough power for a few more days if she was very careful. She stood up slowly, her joints stiff from sitting too long in the cold. Her legs felt weak, but she made herself walk to the window. Outside, the landscape was white and lifeless under alien stars she didn't recognize. No ships had come this way in all the months she had been here. No rescue was coming. Una pressed her forehead against the cold glass and closed her eyes. Maybe tomorrow would be warmer. Maybe she would find another working heater somewhere in the station's maze of rooms. Maybe a miracle would happen. But deep in her heart, she knew the truth. She was dying slowly in this frozen tomb, and no one in the universe knew or cared where she was. Captain Minho was drinking his morning coffee when the communication panel started beeping. He almost ignored it, thinking it was just another false alarm from their old equipment. The New Dawn was 20 years past her prime, held together by spare parts and hope. Everything on the ship made noise when it shouldn't, but the beeping kept going, steady and insistent. Minho put down his cup and walked over to check the display. His eyes widened when he saw what was there. A distress signal, weak but definitely real, coming from the Xerion system. "That's impossible," he muttered, adjusting the controls to get a clearer reading. The Xerion system had been dead for over 5 years. No ships went there anymore because there was nothing left to find. The mining companies had stripped everything valuable and moved on when the planets got too cold to work on. Ji-won looked up from the engine diagnostics she was running at her station. She was the ship's engineer, a careful woman who always thought twice before doing anything risky. "What's impossible?" she asked, wiping grease from her hands with an old rag. "We're getting a distress call from Xerion 7, Minho said, still staring at the screen. "But that system's been abandoned for years." Ji-won got up and came over to look at the display. She frowned, checking the signal strength and frequency. "Could be a trap," she said after a moment. "Pirates sometimes use fake distress calls to lure salvage ships into ambushes. They know we can't ignore someone calling for help." Minho nodded. He'd heard the stories too. Salvage crews who responded to distress calls only to find heavily armed pirate ships waiting for them. It was a clever trick, because salvagers were decent people who wouldn't leave someone to die, even if it meant risking their own lives. "But what if it's real?" Minho asked. "What if someone's actually stranded out there?" The rest of the crew had gathered around now. Dae-hyun, their cargo specialist, shook his head. "Boss, we barely have enough fuel to make it to our next job. If we go chasing signals in dead systems, we might end up stranded ourselves." Hyun-woo, who handled communications, was already trying to get more information from the signal. "It's definitely coming from that old mining station orbiting Xerion 7, he said. "But it's really weak. Whoever's sending it doesn't have much power left." "See?" Ji-won said, crossing her arms. "It's probably just automated systems malfunctioning. Those old stations sometimes send out random signals when their computers start failing. We'd be wasting time and fuel for nothing." Minho stared at the blinking dot on their navigation screen that marked the signal's location. The Xerion system was 2 days away at their ship's best speed. 2 days there, however long it took to investigate, and 2 days back. It would use up almost all their fuel reserves. "What if it's not automated?" he asked quietly. "What if there's really someone out there, dying while we debate about fuel costs?" The crew was quiet for a moment. They all knew what it was like to be alone in space, far from help. Every salvager had nightmares about their ship breaking down in empty space, with no one coming to rescue them. "The smart thing would be to ignore it," Dae-hyun said finally. "Report it to the authorities when we reach the next station and let them handle it." "The authorities don't patrol dead systems," Hyun-woo pointed out. "If we don't check it out, no one will." Ji-won sighed and ran her hands through her hair. "Minho, I know you want to help, but we have responsibilities to the crew. If we run out of fuel chasing ghosts, we could all end up dead." Minho looked around at his crew, these people who had become like family to him over the years. They trusted him to make good decisions, to keep them safe and profitable. The smart choice was obvious. Ignore the signal and stick to their planned route. But something in his gut told him this was different. The signal was too weak to be a pirate trap and too regular to be a random malfunction. Someone was out there, probably scared and alone, sending out their last desperate call for help. "Set course for Xerion 7, he said finally. "Boss," Ji-won started to protest. "I know it's risky," Minho cut her off, "but I can't live with myself if we ignore this and someone dies because of it. We'll be quick. Get in, check it out, and if it's nothing, we'll leave right away." 2 days later, they dropped out of hyperspace near the frozen planet. The mining station was exactly where the signal said it would be, but it looked dead. No lights, no signs of activity, just a dark metal structure slowly spiraling toward the planet's surface. "Gravity's pulling it down," Ji-won observed, checking their sensors. "It'll crash into the planet in maybe a week." "Still getting the distress signal, though," Hyun-woo reported. "Coming from inside the station." Minho stared at the dark structure through the view screen. Someone was in there alone in the cold and dark, watching their temporary home fall toward a frozen grave. He couldn't abandon them now. "Prepare for docking," he ordered. The airlock hissed as it sealed behind them, and Minho immediately felt the bone-deep cold seeping through his environmental suit. His breath came out in white puffs that fogged his helmet visor. Beside him, Dae-hyun was already shivering despite the suit's heating elements. "This place is colder than space," Dae-hyun muttered, checking his suit's temperature readings. "How is that even possible?" Minho activated his helmet's flashlight and swept it across the corridor. The beam revealed frost-covered walls and emergency lighting strips that flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the thin air, creating a hollow sound that seemed to go on forever. "Signals coming from deeper inside," Minho said, following the tracking device on his wrist display. The distress beacon was stronger now, but still weak enough that whoever was sending it didn't have much power left. They moved carefully through the abandoned hallways, past empty rooms that had once housed mining equipment and worker quarters. Everything was covered in a thin layer of ice that crunched under their boots. Minho could see his own breath inside his helmet, which meant the cold was overwhelming even his suit's heating system. "Look at this," Dae-hyun said, stopping at what had once been a cafeteria. Tables and chairs were scattered around, some overturned as if people had left in a hurry. Frost-covered abandoned meal trays and personal belongings. They really did just pack up and leave everything behind. "Must have happened fast," Minho agreed. When the company decided this place wasn't profitable anymore, they probably gave everyone a day to grab their things and go. They continued following the signal deeper into the station's center. The corridors here were warmer, but only slightly. Minho's scanner showed the temperature was still well below freezing. As they walked, he started noticing signs that someone had been living here recently. Makeshift repairs to broken panels, salvaged equipment arranged in corners, and paths through the frost that showed regular foot traffic. "Someone's definitely been here," he told Dae-hyun. "And recently, too. Could still be pirates," Dae-hyun said nervously, checking his sidearm. "Maybe they're using this place as a base." But as they got closer to the signal's source, Minho started to doubt that theory. Pirates would have better heating, better equipment, better everything. This looked more like someone desperately trying to survive with whatever they could find. The EE signal led them to a small maintenance room near the station's power core. Minho pushed open the door and immediately saw a figure huddled next to a small heating device. His first thought was that they'd found a human survivor, maybe someone who'd been left behind when the station was abandoned. Then he got a closer look and realized this wasn't human at all. The being was small, maybe the size of a teenager, with skin that looked like it was made of blue crystal or glass. Even in the dim light, Minho could see that the skin was translucent, with what looked like veins of light running underneath. But the light was very faint, barely visible, like a dying glow stick. "What is that?" Dae-hyun whispered, taking a step back. Minho knelt down beside the figure and gently touched its shoulder. The being was unconscious, breathing so shallowly that he almost couldn't tell if it was alive. When he checked his thermal scanner, it barely registered any body heat at all. "It's dying," he said. "Whatever it is, it's freezing to death." "We need to call this in," Dae-hyun said, already reaching for his communicator. "Contact the authorities, let them know we found an alien life form. There are protocols for this kind of thing. By the time help arrives, it'll be dead," Minho said, starting to unzip his heated jacket. "Look at it, it's practically an ice cube already." "What are you doing?" Dae-hyun asked, alarmed. "What does it look like? I'm trying to save its life." Minho wrapped his jacket around the alien's small form, immediately feeling the cold bite into his own body through his thin undershirt. "Are you crazy? We don't know anything about its biology. It could be carrying diseases or toxins or who knows what. There are contamination protocols for a reason." Minho carefully lifted the alien in his arms. It weighed almost nothing, like holding a child made of ice. "You're right, we don't know anything about it. But I know what dying looks like, and this thing is dying right now. I can file reports later." "The regulations clearly state," Dae-hyun started. "The regulations can go to hell," Minho cut him off, already heading for the door. "I'm not going to stand here and watch something freeze to death while we debate paperwork." As they hurried back through the corridors toward their ship, Minho felt the alien's body start to warm slightly against his chest. It was still unconscious, but its breathing seemed a little stronger. "The medical bay's ready," Hyunwoo's voice crackled through their helmets. Yunji standing by with the emergency equipment. When they reached the new dawn, Minho carried the alien straight to the medical bay. The moment they entered the warm, well-lit room, something amazing happened. The alien's translucent skin began to show tiny flickers of light, like stars trying to shine through clouds. "It's reacting to the warmth," Yunji said in wonder, running her medical scanner over the alien's body. "Its whole system is starting to come back online." Minho set the alien down on the medical bed and stepped back, watching as more light began to flow through its crystalline skin. Whatever this being was, it was tough. It had survived alone in that frozen hell for who knows how long, clinging to life with nothing but scavenged heaters and sheer determination. "Boss," Daehyun said quietly, "I think you made the right call." As if hearing him, the alien's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. They were large and dark, filled with confusion and fear, but also something that looked like hope. Then they closed again as the being drifted into what looked like natural sleep rather than unconsciousness. "Yeah," Minho said, watching the light continue to grow stronger under the alien's skin. "I think I did too." Yuna's eyes opened slowly, like someone waking from the deepest sleep of their life. The first thing she noticed wasn't sight or sound, but warmth. Real, honest warmth that seemed to wrap around her entire body like a gentle hug. For a moment, she thought she might be dreaming, or maybe she had died, and this was what came after. But then she tried to move, and felt the soft material beneath her. This wasn't the cold metal floor of the mining station. This was something comfortable, something meant for living beings to rest on. She turned her head slightly and saw walls that glowed with a soft, warm light. Not the harsh, flickering emergency. Lights she'd grown used to, but steady illumination that made everything feel safe. The air itself felt different. It moved gently across her skin, carrying warmth instead of the biting cold she'd known for so many months. She took a deep breath and realized the air was clean and fresh, not the stale, recycled atmosphere of the dying station. "She's waking up," a voice said softly, in a language she didn't recognize. The tone was gentle, careful, like someone trying not to frighten a wounded animal. Yuna tried to sit up, but gentle hands pressed her back down onto the soft surface. She looked up to see a face she'd never seen before. The being had dark hair and kind eyes, with skin that radiated heat she could actually feel from several inches away. This had to be one of the creatures that had found her. "Easy there," the being said, and somehow Yuna understood the meaning even though the words were foreign. "You're safe now, just rest." This must be one of the humans she'd heard stories about. Her people rarely spoke of other species, but she remembered old tales of beings that lived on warm worlds and generated their own heat, like living furnaces. She'd thought they were just myths. The human's hands moved over her body with practiced care, using strange devices that hummed softly and displayed colored lights. Everything the human touched felt warm, as if heat flowed directly from their skin. It was the most wonderful thing Yuna had ever experienced. Another human appeared at the edge of her vision, this one carrying a small device that made clicking and beeping sounds. They spoke to each other in their strange language, their voices full of concern and curiosity. Yuna could hear something in their tones that she'd never heard before, something that made her chest feel tight with emotion. They cared. These strangers, these aliens actually cared what happened to her. "Can you understand me?" the second human asked, speaking slowly and clearly. The device in their hands flashed with lights as they spoke. Yuna tried to answer, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. Her throat was dry and rough from months of cold air and poor nutrition. The first human quickly brought a container of liquid to her lips. The water was warm, warmer than anything she'd drunk in her entire life, and it felt like liquid sunlight flowing down her throat. "Thank you," she managed to say in her own language. The device in the second human's hands chirped excitedly, and words appeared on its small screen. The human smiled widely, showing white teeth. "You're welcome," they said, and this time Yuna understood perfectly. Over the next few hours, as she slowly regained her strength, Yuna learned that she was on something called a ship, traveling through space. The humans had found her signal and come to rescue her, even though they didn't know what they would find. This concept amazed her. On her homeworld, no one helped strangers. Everyone looked out for themselves and their immediate family, and that was it. The human tending to her introduced herself as Yunji. She was a healer, someone whose job was to help others feel better. As Yunji worked, she talked constantly, explaining what she was doing and asking how Yuna felt. Her voice was warm and soothing, and Yuna found herself relaxing for the first time in months. Your body temperature was dangerously low when they found you, Yunji explained through the translation device. But you're warming up nicely now. Your skin is starting to glow again. Yuna looked down at her arms and gasped. The crystalline surface of her skin, which had been dull and cracked from the cold, was indeed beginning to show faint patterns of light. She hadn't seen her skin glow like this since she was a child, before her defect became obvious to everyone. It's beautiful, Yunji said softly, watching the light patterns shift and flow, like living art. No one had ever called Yuna beautiful before. Her own people saw her as broken, defective, something to be ashamed of. But this human, this stranger, looked at her with wonder and appreciation. The second human, Hyunwoo, spent hours working with the translation device, helping Yuna learn basic words in their language while teaching the machine to understand hers. He was patient and encouraging, celebrating every small success like it was a major victory. "You're a fast learner," he told her when she managed to say thank you in human language for the first time. As the hours passed, more humans came to visit her. Each one brought something different: warm food, soft blankets, small gifts like interesting stones or drawings. They didn't want anything in return. They were just happy that she was alive and getting better. Captain Minho was the one who had carried her from the station. When he came to check on her, Yuna could see something in his eyes that she'd never seen directed at her before. Genuine concern for her well-being. Not because she was useful, not because he had to, but simply because he cared about another living being suffering. "We're going to take good care of you," he promised through the translator. "You're part of our crew, now for as long as you want to stay." Yuna felt something warm and strange spreading through her chest, something that had nothing to do with the ship's heating systems. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. On her third day aboard the New Dawn, Yuna was strong enough to walk around the ship. Her legs still felt shaky, but the warmth flowing through the corridors gave her energy she hadn't felt in months. As she explored, she heard a frustrated grunt coming from behind an open panel in the wall. "Stupid piece of junk," someone muttered. In the human language she was slowly learning. "Why won't you just work?" Yuna peered around the corner and saw a human man named Jiho wrestling with a tangle of wires and circuits. Sparks were flying from the panel, and the lights in the corridor kept flickering on and off. He looked ready to hit something with his wrench. "Problem?" Yuna asked carefully, still getting used to forming human words. Jiho jumped and spun around, clearly startled. He'd been avoiding her since she arrived, always finding excuses to be somewhere else when she was around. Now he was trapped in the narrow maintenance corridor with her. "It's nothing," he said quickly, trying to block her view of the panel. "Just some technical stuff you wouldn't understand." But Yuna could see the problem immediately. The crystalline technology of her people worked differently than human machines, but energy was energy. She could see exactly where the power flow was being interrupted. "Wire there," she said, pointing to a connection that looked fine to human eyes but was clearly damaged to her enhanced vision. "Inside broken. Replace system work." Jiho looked where she was pointing, then back at her with suspicion. "How could you possibly know that? The wire looks perfectly good." Yuna touched the wall gently and her skin began to glow brighter. Through the metal she could sense the electrical patterns flowing through the ship's systems. It was like being able to see the blood vessels in a living body. "I see energy," she explained simply, "like you see light." After some hesitation, Jiho replaced the wire she'd indicated. Immediately the lights stopped flickering and the system hummed smoothly. He stared at the now working panel, then at Yuna, his expression shifting from suspicion to amazement. "How did you do that?" he asked. Word spread quickly through the ship about Yuna's unusual abilities. Soon, crew members were bringing her all sorts of technical problems. The food processor that had been making strange noises for weeks. The navigation computer that sometimes gave wrong readings. The air recycling system that worked fine most of the time, but occasionally filled rooms with weird smells. Yuna fixed them all. She didn't just repair things randomly, though. She watched and learned how human technology worked, understanding the logic behind their designs. Her people's crystal-based systems were more advanced in some ways, but humans had clever solutions to problems her people had never even considered. "You're like a walking diagnostic scanner," Yunji said one day as Yuna helped her fix a medical device. "But better because you can actually understand what the problems mean." Soyeon, the ship's pilot, had been even more suspicious of Yuna than Jiho. She worried about having an alien on the ship, afraid that Yuna might be hiding dangerous intentions. But when Yuna fixed the navigation system that had been giving Soyeon headaches for months, her attitude began to change. "I owe you an apology," Soyeon said one evening as they sat in the ship's common area. "I thought you might be, I don't know, planning something bad. But you've been nothing but helpful." "Why think bad?" Yuna asked, genuinely curious. Her translation was getting better, but she still struggled with complex ideas. "Because that's what we're taught," Soyeon admitted. "Unknown things are dangerous. Different things are threats, but you're just a person who needed help." This was a concept that fascinated Yuna. Humans seemed to have the same fears her people did about outsiders, but they were able to overcome those fears. They chose to trust and help even when it scared them. The ship's mealtimes became Yuna's favorite part of each day. Unlike her people, who ate quickly and silently to conserve energy, humans turned eating into a social activity. They gathered around a table, shared food, and told stories about their day. "On my home planet," Hyunwoo said one evening, "we have these festivals where the whole village cooks together. Everyone brings something different, and we make this huge feast that lasts for hours." "Why?" Yuna asked. "Food is food." "Because eating together makes the food taste better," Captain Minho explained with a smile. "Food fills your stomach, but sharing a meal fills your heart." Yuna didn't understand this at first, but as days passed she began to feel what he meant. When she ate alone in the mining station, food was just fuel to keep her alive. But when she ate with the crew, surrounded by their warmth and laughter, the same food seemed to give her strength in ways that had nothing to do with nutrition. She started contributing her own stories to their evening conversations. She told them about her homeworld, about the crystal cities that grew from the ground like living things, about the aurora-like lights that danced through the atmosphere during certain seasons. "It sounds beautiful," Daehyun said wistfully. "I'd love to see it someday." "Maybe," Yuna said, though privately she doubted she would ever be welcome there again. Her skin grew brighter every day, not just from the physical warmth of the ship, but from something deeper. The humans had words for it that didn't exist in her language: belonging, acceptance, family. These weren't just concepts to them, they were ways of living. When Jiho started teaching her how to play a human card game, and Soyeon began showing her how to pilot the ship during quiet shifts, and Yoonji included her in the medical training sessions, Yuna realized something that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. She was happy. For the first time in her entire life, she was genuinely, completely happy, and her skin glowed like a beacon, bright enough that the humans had to dim the lights in whatever room she entered. But none of them complained. They just smiled and adjusted the lighting, making room for her light the same way they'd made room for her in their lives. 2 weeks after joining the crew, Yuna found Captain Minho sitting alone in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars through the large window. She had been looking for him to ask about some ship protocols, but something about his posture made her pause. He looked thoughtful, maybe even sad. "Captain," she said softly, not wanting to disturb him if he wanted to be alone. "Oh, Yuna," he said, turning with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Come in, sit down, I was just thinking." She settled into the chair next to him, her skin casting a gentle blue glow that mixed with the starlight coming through the window. "Thinking about what?" "About second chances," Minho said, looking back out at the stars. "About how life gives us opportunities to start over, even when we think everything is finished." Yuna tilted her head, curious. "What means second chances?" Minho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. It means when something bad happens to you, when people say you're not good enough or you make mistakes, you still get another opportunity to prove them wrong, to show that you're more than what others think you are. Like me? Yuna asked. My people say I'm broken, but here, I'm not broken. Exactly like you, Minho said warmly, but also like all of us on this ship. Ji-won was kicked out of the military for questioning orders she thought were wrong. Dae-hyun lost his family's business because he trusted the wrong people. Hyunwoo was rejected from the Space Academy because they said he wasn't smart enough. Yuna looked around the ship with new eyes. Everyone here has second chances? That's why we work so well together, Minho explained. We understand that people aren't defined by their worst moments or their biggest failures. We believe everyone deserves a chance to prove what they're really capable of. This conversation stayed with Yuna for days. She began to see her crewmates differently, understanding that their kindness to her came from their own experiences of being rejected or dismissed. They knew what it felt like to be told you weren't good enough. Her relationship with Ji-won changed the most dramatically. The engineer had been polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable with having an alien on board. But when Yuna offered to help upgrade the ship's power systems using principles from her people's crystal technology, Ji-won's professional curiosity overcame her personal reservations. Show me how this works, Ji-won said one morning, pointing to a diagram Yuna had drawn of a crystal matrix power converter. Crystal not just hold energy, Yuna explained, her hands glowing as she touched various components. Crystal can grow. Energy make more from less, like plant growing from seed. Ji-won's eyes widened as she watched Yuna demonstrate. That's impossible. You can't create energy from nothing. It violates basic physics. Not create from nothing, Yuna said patiently. Take small energy from many places, bring together, make bigger energy, like river made from many small streams. Working together, they spent days redesigning parts of the ship's power grid. Ji-won provided the technical knowledge of human engineering, while Yuna contributed insights from her people's more advanced understanding of energy manipulation. What started as a professional collaboration slowly became something deeper. You know, Ji-won said one evening as they finished installing a new power converter, when you first came aboard, I was terrified of you. Why terrified? Yuna asked, genuinely puzzled. Because you were different, unknown, and unknown things can be dangerous. Ji-won sat back, wiping sweat from her forehead. But working with you these past weeks, I've realized something. You're not dangerous because you're different. You're valuable because you're different. Valuable? You see solutions we can't see. You think about problems in ways we never would. If everyone was exactly the same, we'd never learn anything new or get any better. This was another revelation for Yuna. On her homeworld, being different was seen as a weakness, a flaw to be hidden or eliminated. But humans seem to see differences as strengths, as opportunities to learn and grow. She began to understand this better as she observed the crew's daily interactions. During their evening meals, she noticed how they made decisions together. When they disagreed about something, they didn't fight or shut each other out. They listened to different viewpoints and found solutions that worked for everyone. Why you? All care so much about each other, she asked Yoonji one day. You not family by blood? Yoonji smiled as she organized her medical supplies. We're family by choice, she said. That's sometimes stronger than blood family. How can be stronger? Blood family, you're stuck with whether you like them or not, Yoonji explained. But chosen family, you pick each other. You decide to care about each other, to support each other, to stick together even when things get hard. Yuna thought about her birth family, who had cast her out without a second thought when she proved to be different. Then she thought about these humans who had risked their lives and resources to save a complete stranger, simply because it was the right thing to do. I understand, she said quietly. The moment she truly felt like part of the family came during a crisis, 3 weeks after she'd joined the crew. The ship's main computer system crashed during a routine jump between star systems, leaving them stranded in empty space with minimal life support. We've got maybe 6 hours of air, Ji-won reported grimly. The backup systems are trying to restart the main computer, but it's not working. Let me try, Yuna said, moving to the computer core. Yuna, that's incredibly dangerous, Minho warned. If you make a mistake, you could fry the entire system. Trust me, she said simply. The crew exchanged glances, and Yuna realized this was a pivotal moment. They could order her to step back, handle the crisis without her, treat her like a passenger instead of a crew member, or they could trust her with their lives. Do it, Minho said after a long pause. Yuna placed her hands on the computer core, her skin blazing with light as she interfaced directly with the ship's electronic systems. She could feel the damaged pathways in the computer's matrix, see where the cascade failure had started and how it had spread. Working carefully, she rerouted power around the damaged sections and gradually coaxed the system back to life. It took 2 hours of intense concentration, but finally the main computer hummed back to life, and the life support systems resumed full operation. When she stepped back from the computer, exhausted but triumphant, the entire crew was watching her with expressions of awe and gratitude. You saved us, Daehyun said simply. We saved us, Yuna corrected. We are crew. We are family. And for the first time, she truly meant it. The alarms started screaming at 800 hours, jolting everyone from their morning routines. Yuna was helping. Hyunji organized medical supplies when the red warning lights began flashing throughout the ship. She had never seen the humans move so fast, dropping everything and running to their stations. Unknown vessel approaching, Hyunwoo called out from the communication station, his voice tight with tension. It's big, Captain. Really big. Yuna followed the crew to the bridge, her skin flickering with nervous energy. Through the main view screen, she could see a massive ship approaching them. It was nothing like the warm, lived-in feel of the new dawn. This vessel was all sharp angles and crystalline surfaces that caught the starlight like ice. Her blood turned cold. She recognized that design. It's a Kethlan warship, she whispered, barely able to get the words out. Captain Minho turned to look at her, his face grim. Your people? Before Yuna could answer, the communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in the crystal-clear tones of her native language, each word cutting through the bridge like a blade. Human vessel, you are carrying stolen property belonging to the Kethlan Empire. Prepare to be boarded for inspection and retrieval. They're talking about you, Jiwon said, her hand moving instinctively to her sidearm. Yuna's skin had gone almost completely transparent with fear. They found me, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I was too far away. I thought they wouldn't care enough to look. Well, they obviously care about something, Minho said. He activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Minho of the salvage vessel New Dawn. We are in neutral space and have committed no crimes. State your business. The response came immediately. You harbor a criminal exile who stole vital resources from her people. Return her now, and you will be allowed to leave. I'm not going. Back, Yuna said, her voice getting stronger as fear turned to determination. I won't go back to die slowly in the cold. But even as she spoke, she could see the hopelessness of their situation. The Kethlan ship was easily 10 times the size of the New Dawn, bristling with weapons that could turn their little salvage vessel into scrap metal in seconds. Captain, Soyeon called from the pilot station, they're powering up their weapons. And they're jamming our communications. We can't call for help. A new sound echoed through the ship, the distinctive hum of a docking tube connecting to their airlock. The Kethlan weren't waiting for permission to board. Everyone stay calm, Minho ordered, but Yuna could see the tension in his shoulders. Let them board. We'll hear what they have to say. The airlock cycled open, and 3 figures in crystalline armor stepped aboard. Yuna recognized the military uniforms immediately, the same ones she'd seen when she was a child watching parades, from her family's window. But it was the face of the lead figure that made her legs nearly give out. Hello, sister, the figure said, removing his helmet to reveal features that looked like a masculine version of Yuna's own face. Same translucent blue skin, same dark eyes, same delicate bone structure. But where Yuna's skin glowed with warm light, his remained cold and dim. Sunho, she breathed. You remember me? Good. Her brother looked around the bridge with obvious distaste, his nose wrinkling at the warmth and the chaotic arrangement of human technology. This place reeks of thermal waste. How can you stand living in such excessive heat? What do you want? Yuna asked, though part of her already knew. What I've always wanted. To bring you home. Sunho stepped closer, and Yuna instinctively backed toward her human crewmates. But circumstances have changed since you were exiled. Our world is dying faster than we anticipated. He gestured to one of his soldiers, who activated a small holographic projector. Images filled the air above them, cities covered in ice, Kethlan people huddled in failing shelters, power grids shutting down one by one. Our energy reserves are depleting rapidly, Sunho continued. The crystal matrices that power our civilization are burning out. We need new solutions, and your unique abilities may be the key to saving our entire species. My abilities? Yuna's voice was small and confused. I can't even keep myself warm. That's why you threw me away. You can't generate heat, Sunho. Agreed. But you can absorb it, more efficiently than anyone we've ever seen. You can take thermal energy from multiple sources and concentrate it, redirect it, amplify it. The hologram changed to show technical diagrams that made Yuna's head spin. Energy conversion charts, thermal absorption rates, power multiplication calculations. With your abilities, we can build converters that will take the heat from our planet's core and distribute it to where it's needed most. You could save billions of lives. But? Yuna asked because she could hear it in his voice. Sunho's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. The process would require complete integration with our planetary energy grid. Your consciousness would merge with the system. You would become the converter. You mean she would die, Captain Minho said flatly. Her individual existence would end, Sunho admitted, but she would become something greater. She would be the heart that keeps our entire civilization alive. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of ship systems. Yuna stared at the holographic images of her dying homeworld, at the faces of people she had grown up among, people who had cast her out, but people nonetheless. You have 1 hour to decide, Sunho said, replacing his helmet. Surrender yourself, willingly, and we will allow your human friends to leave unharmed. Refuse, and we will take you by force. The humans will be eliminated as witnesses. Wait! Daehyun started to protest, but one of the Kethlan soldiers raised a weapon that hummed with dangerous energy. 1 hour, Sunho repeated. Choose wisely, sister. For once in your life, be useful to your people. The boarding party left. As quickly as they had arrived, leaving the crew of the New Dawn alone with an impossible choice. Save one person they had come to love, or watch her sacrifice herself to save billions of strangers who had never shown her kindness. Yuna sank into a chair, her skin flickering erratically as her emotions overwhelmed her control. Around her, her chosen family stood in stunned silence, each of them trying to find words for a situation that had no good answers. The countdown had begun. The moment the Kethlan boarding party left, the bridge erupted into urgent whispers. Yuna sat frozen in her chair, staring at the spot where her brother had stood, while the crew gathered around Captain Minho. We can't fight that thing, Ji-won said, her voice barely controlled. Their weapons could cut us in half before we even got our shields up. So what are you suggesting? Minho asked quietly. That we just hand her over? I'm saying we need to be realistic, Ji-won replied. 1 life against billions, maybe... No. The word came from Soyeon, sharp and final. Absolutely not. Yuna is crew, we don't abandon crew. Daehyun nodded firmly. She saved our lives when the computer failed. Now it's our turn to save hers. But how? Hyunwoo asked, running his hands through his hair. We're a salvage ship with mining lasers and basic shields. They're a military vessel built for war. Yuna finally looked up, her skin flickering with pale, uncertain light. Maybe I should go, she said quietly. My people are dying, billions of them, and I'm just one. You're not just one, Yoonji said fiercely, kneeling beside Yuna's chair. You're our friend, our family, and family doesn't sacrifice each other. But if I don't go, they'll kill you all, Yuna whispered, tears making crystalline tracks down her translucent cheeks. I can't live with that. Minho activated the intercom. All crew to stations. We're going to fight. Captain, Jiwon started to protest. That's an order, Minho cut her off. Yuna chose us, now we choose her. The next 30 minutes were a blur of desperate preparation. Soyeon worked frantically at the pilot station, plotting escape routes and evasive maneuvers that might buy them precious seconds. Jiwon and Daehyun rushed to the engine room to coax every bit of power from their aging systems. In the ship's small weapons bay, Gunner Minji was running diagnostics on their pathetic arsenal. 2 mining lasers that had been converted for basic defense and a handful of old missiles that might not even penetrate military-grade shields. This is hopeless, she muttered, but kept working anyway. Pilot Dongmin squeezed into the cramped gunner's seat beside her. Maybe we can't win, he said, but we can make sure they remember us. Yuna wandered the ship like a ghost, watching her friends prepare to die for her. In the medical bay, Yoonji was setting up emergency trauma equipment, her hands steady, despite the tears in her eyes. In the cargo hold, Jiho was welding metal plates over the most vulnerable sections of the hull. Why are you doing this? Yuna asked him. Jiho looked up from his welding torch, his face serious. Because that's what humans do. We stand up for people. Who can't stand up for themselves, even when it's stupid? Especially when it's stupid. 20 minutes before the deadline, Minho made one last attempt at negotiation. He opened a channel to the Kethlan warship, his voice steady despite the impossible situation. Commander Sunho, this is Captain Minho. I want to propose an alternative. Sunho's cold face appeared on the main screen. There is no alternative, human. Return my sister, or face the consequences. What if we could help you find another solution? Minho pressed. Give us time. Let us work together to solve your energy crisis without killing Yuna. Time is what we do not have, Sunho replied. Our planet dies a little more each day. My sister's sacrifice will save billions of lives. Surely even a human can understand that mathematics. And what about the mathematics of right and wrong? Minho shot back. Does your advanced civilization not understand the value of individual life? Individual life is meaningless compared to the survival of our species. Sunho's image flickered with static. You have 10 minutes remaining. Use them wisely. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside the viewports, the massive Kethlan warship hung in space like a predator waiting to strike. Weapon ports were opening along its hull, revealing arrays of destructive power that could vaporize the new dawn in seconds. All stations ready. Soyeon reported from the pilot's seat. Engines at maximum power. Weapons charged and targeted, Minji called from the weapons bay. Though I'm not sure what good it'll do. Shields at full strength, Jiwon added, which isn't saying much. Yuna stood in the center of the bridge, surrounded by the humans who had become her family. Each of them was ready to die rather than let her be taken. The weight of their sacrifice pressed down on her like a physical force. 5 minutes, Hyunwoo announced quietly. The Kethlan ship's weapons began to glow with gathered energy. On the new dawn, systems hummed at maximum power as they prepared for a battle they couldn't win. Whatever happens, Minho said, his voice carrying to every corner of the ship, I want you all to know it's been an honor serving with you. Similar responses echoed from every station. These humans, who barely knew each other before joining this crew, had formed bonds stronger than blood. And now they were willing to die for those bonds. Yuna's skin began to glow brighter, fed by emotions she had never experienced before. Love, loyalty, belonging, feelings that had no translation in her native language, but burned bright in her. Crystalline heart. 2 minutes, Hyunwoo whispered. The countdown continued, each second bringing them closer to a confrontation that would end in either their deaths or Yuna's sacrifice. But neither option was acceptable to the crew of the New Dawn. They would find a third way or die trying. 30 seconds. Hyunwoo's voice was barely a whisper. Yuna stood in the center of the bridge, watching her human family prepare for death. Minho's hand hovered over the weapons control, ready to fire their pathetic mining lasers at a ship that could crush them like an insect. Soyeon's fingers gripped the pilot controls, ready to attempt impossible evasive maneuvers. Every face around her was set with grim determination. They were going to die for her. These wonderful, warm beings who had shown her what love meant were about to be destroyed because they refused to abandon her. 10 seconds, Hyunwoo whispered. Yuna closed her eyes and felt something she had never experienced before. Not just the physical warmth of the ship around her, but the emotional warmth of people who cared. It flowed through her like liquid sunlight, filling every corner of her crystalline body with light and energy. 5, 4, 3, stop, Yuna said quietly. But instead of surrendering, instead of walking toward the airlock to meet her fate, she did something no one expected. She pressed her hands against the nearest wall panel and let her consciousness expand through the ship's systems. Her skin blazed with brilliant light as she connected with every circuit, every wire, every energy pathway in the new dawn. But she didn't stop there. Her unique abilities, the same ones that made her a failure among her people, allowed her to reach beyond her own ship. The energy bridge she created sparked across space itself, connecting with the Kethlan warship's crystalline systems. Both vessels shuddered as their weapons suddenly powered down, their targeting systems went offline, and their engines reduced to minimal power. "What's happening?" Minho shouted over the sound of systems cycling down. Yuna didn't answer, because she was no longer entirely present on the bridge. Part of her consciousness was traveling along the energy connection she had created, reaching directly into the mind of her brother. Sunho gasped and staggered in his command center as Yuna's presence suddenly filled his thoughts. But this wasn't an attack or an invasion. It was an invitation. "Feel what I feel," Yuna's voice echoed in his mind. "See what I have seen." And suddenly, Sunho experienced warmth for the first time in his life. Not just physical heat, but the incredible sensation of being truly cared for. Through Yuna's memories, he felt Captain Minho wrapping a freezing alien child in his own jacket. He experienced Yoonji's gentle hands tending to injuries with no thought of reward. He saw Jiwon teaching advanced engineering to someone she had once feared, simply because knowledge was meant to be shared. "This is what they gave me." Yuna's mental voice was soft but powerful. "Not just heat to keep my body alive, but warmth to make my soul grow." Sunho staggered, overwhelmed by emotions his people had forgotten how to feel. Through the connection, he experienced the crew's evening meals where they shared stories and laughter. He felt the joy of Hyunwoo celebrating when Yuna learned a new word. He understood the pride Daehyun felt when Yuna helped him solve a difficult cargo problem. "They chose me," Yuna continued. "Not because I was useful, but because I was alone. They made me family not through blood but through love." "I don't understand," Sunho whispered, both aloud and through their mental link. "You want to save our people by taking my life," Yuna explained. "But what you would take is not just my body. You would take everything I have learned about what makes life worth living. You would destroy the very thing that could actually save our people." Through their connection, Yuna showed him what she had discovered. True strength wasn't about surviving at any cost. It wasn't about taking what you needed regardless of who got hurt. True strength was about lifting others up, about choosing to care even when it was difficult, about creating warmth instead of just hoarding it. Our people are dying not just from cold, Yuna realized as she shared the insight with her brother. We are dying because we forgot how to truly live. We forgot how to care for each other. Sunho's rigid mental barriers began to crack as wave after wave of human compassion flowed through him. He experienced Minji's fierce loyalty to her crewmates. He felt Dongmin's willingness to sacrifice himself for others. He understood Jiho's simple belief that helping people was just what you did. "This is what we need." Yuna's voice was growing stronger. "Not my death, but my life. Let me teach our people what I have learned. Let me show them that survival is not enough. We need to learn how to thrive." The connection lasted only minutes, but it changed everything. When Yuna finally withdrew from her brother's mind, both ships hung motionless in space, their crews staring at each other across the void. Sunho's face appeared on the main screen, but he looked different. His cold, controlled expression had been replaced by something that looked almost like wonder. "Sister," he said softly, "I felt it. The warmth you spoke of. It's real." "It's real," Yuna confirmed, her skin glowing so brightly that the bridge lights had dimmed automatically. "And it's what our people need to learn. But how? How can we teach an entire civilization to feel what these humans showed you? Yuna looked around at her crew, at the faces of people who had been willing to die for her. By example, she said, let me stay with my chosen family, but as an ambassador. Let me travel between our peoples, sharing what I've learned. Let me show our people that strength comes not from taking, but from giving. Sunho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a warmth it had never held before. The council will resist this idea. Then we'll change their minds, Yuna said with a smile. One person at a time, one act of kindness at a time, just like the humans changed mine. The crisis was over, but the real work was just beginning. As the Kethlan warship powered down its weapons and prepared to depart, as the crew of the New Dawn slowly began to believe they were going to survive, Yuna stood surrounded by her chosen family and blazed like a star. She had found her purpose, at last, not as a sacrifice to save her people through death, but as a bridge to save them through life, through love, through the simple but revolutionary idea that caring for others was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Welcome home, Captain Minho said softly, and Yuna knew that wherever the New Dawn traveled, wherever her new role as ambassador took her, she would always carry that warmth with her. She had learned the most important lesson in the universe. That family isn't about blood or species or birthplace. Family is about choice and love, and the willingness to stand together no matter what the universe throws at you. And her family was right here, glowing in the warmth they had created together.